Ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll get started. Welcome to the Cheltenham Borough Council Planning Committee, being held on Thursday, the 29th of May 2025. My name is Councillor Garth Barnes, and I'm the chair of the committee. This meeting is being streamed live to Cheltenham Borough Council's YouTube channel, and the recording of the meeting will be held for 4 years. If there are any breaks in transmission to the YouTube stream, the meeting will be adjourned for a short period until any issues are resolved. If you are here to make a representation to the meeting, you are consenting to the use of the sound and video recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. Please be aware that CCTV and audio recording is now in operation in the public gallery. The recordings will be held by the Council for 5 months. Please note, a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, you should immediately withdraw to the nearest exit. Thank you. Okay, we're to the meeting. The first item is apologies, and we have apologies from Councillor Ian Doby, who is hit on the committee to replace Paul Baker. He will be at the subsequent meetings. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Just for full transparency, I attended a meeting with Swindon Village Parish Council in summer 2024 discussing the Elms Park development. I made no opinions either way, and I've kept an open mind to this point in the committee and have not predetermined the application throughout. So I am of the mind that I am able to vote on this application, and that does not bar me from sitting on this committee.
Thank you for that. That's great. Any other declarations? No. So item 3 is the declarations of independent site visits. I think there were only 2 members who weren't able to attend. I don't know if they had a subsequent opportunity. Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, I have had a stroll through a couple of the fields there. Yeah.
Item 4 is public questions. There are none, so we move straight on to the actual planning item, item 5, which is Elms Park, Tewkesbury. And on this instance, I'm introducing Paul Instone, who is the planning officer in charge of this particular case, and I'll ask him to introduce it to us. Please, over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I start on the presentation, I'm sure members are aware that it's a cross-boundary planning application, and it was heard at Tewkesbury this morning, where the planning committee resolved to accept the officer's recommendation with one amendment, that in condition 49, which is energy supply condition, the members have resolved that the word cooking should be inserted within that planning condition. So it would effectively then read, no dwelling hereby permitted shall be connected to mains gas supplies for any purpose of domestic hot water or space heating or cooking. So that's the only amendment that was resolved by the Tewkesbury committee. So if we can sort of accept that resolution into the recommendation, so we have consistent planning conditions if possible. Just starting in terms of other updates, members would have had the additional representation sheet, and I'll just run through the changes which are in that. So condition 4A is updated to also refer to the building demolition plan as well as a parameter plan. So that plan just identifies which buildings would be demolished as a result of the planning permission. It isn't the case that all of the buildings have to necessarily be demolished, and we'll come on to this later because there's a dwelling shown to be demolished known as Fairfield. But it does establish the principle that those dwellings those buildings can be demolished. The other update in the late representation sheet is condition 54, where we've just made changed the clarity. We've made it more precise by referring more accurately to the plans which are referred to, because it was apparent that there was a number of plans with the same reference number. So it's just to prevent future confusion, which would hopefully never occur. So it's just making sure the condition's precise. There's also an error identified in the committee report, and where the committee refers to a dwelling known as Fairfields, that's actually Fair Oaks, which is outside the application site, and then immediately to the south of Fair Oaks is a dwelling known as Fairfield, which is in the application site. And I just clarified that, and I'll point that out as we go through the presentation. In terms of the highway works at Kinstitch, Wyman's Lane, there's just clarification of what those works entail. And the committee update just also puts forward additional representations which have been received from 2 landowners within the application site who aren't the applicant. So the applicant has put an application in, as they are entitled to do so, which includes land which isn't in their ownership. And we've received additional representations from those third-party landowners, and the late rep sheet sets out their concerns. And yeah, finally, and there was also a letter of support from Rail Futures received for the application, which is summarised in the late reps. So just then moving on to the committee presentation. So the plan up on the screen shows the location of the application site, edged red. So it's in the northwest of Cheltenham, immediately adjacent to the conurbation, just north of the Tewkesbury Road and to the east of Junction 10. In terms of the application site itself, it's located just to the sort of northwest of Sainsbury's and Gallagher Retail Park, to the west of Swindon Village in terms of its relationship with Cheltenham, and to the west it's just in proximity to Uckerton Village, and then Elms and Hardwick is the nearest settlement to the northwest. Notable features to the north are the Wingmore landfill, and then it's Tewkesbury Road to the south. In terms of notable geographic features in the site, the river Swellgate runs through the centre of the site. There is Hyde Brook runs along the north, and Swindon Brook runs between the two. And although it's not shown on the plan, there's also a Ley Brook, which is just by the site in the proximity of Uckington. There's also a network of public footpaths on the site, which primarily follow the watercourses. So Dogbart Lane is a well-known route locally, which links upwards from sort of Manor Road, and there's also the Cheltenham Circular walking route, which runs across the site from Swindon Village over towards Elms and Hardwick. I think it's just worth noting the locations of these watercourses and the footpaths just for future reference as we go through the plans, because they have sort of moved forward to try and assimilate into the design where these natural features are in the site. I think now just going back to the sort of history of the site and where we are. So the application site, the application forms a majority of a JCS strategic allocation policy A4, which was adopted as part of the joint core strategy in 2017. The site was allocated to meet Cheltenham's housing needs supply through the plan period up to 2031. So whilst the site is half located in Tewkesbury, half located within Cheltenham, the housing that will be delivered on this site goes to Cheltenham's plan period supply. It goes to Cheltenham's 5-year housing land supply. and so that it does go towards Cheltenham's housing numbers, and that's a central part of the core strategy. And I mean, in terms of scale, Cheltenham's housing needs in the JCS of circa 10,000 houses. This is 4,000, so it's 40% of Tewkesbury's Cheltenham's housing needs over the plan period. So it's a significant component of the spatial strategy. So yes, the allocation as a whole is meant to deliver 4,285 homes, and so this application provides 4,115, so a substantial part of it, because it doesn't quite encompass entirety of the allocation. But when you look at the JCS indicative site layout, you'll see that the brown areas in this spatial strategy is the indication of where housing would be delivered and when the JCS was adopted. And you'll see that the main rivers on the site are shown as green infrastructure in green. You'll see around Swindon Village, there is at that time signs of the green buffer around Swindon Village. And then the site is also shown in the JCS to deliver a 10-hectare business park, sort of just to the northwest of Sainsbury's and Gallagher Retail Park, and then 13 hectares of non-B class employment, such as retail uses, etc., which is a hatched line. And the JCS also envisaged that a park and ride would be delivered on the site, which you can see there, marked P&R. And the JCS also indicated that the site would have a new primary and secondary schools. Just moving to the cross-boundary context of the site, this you can see from this line. So the pink area is Cheltenham Council, and the sort of brown area to the west is what's in Tewkesbury administrative area. And the line broadly starts around where Sainsbury's is, and then it sort of runs off towards the northwest. But that's just to give you an idea of what part of the site is in Cheltenham and what's in Tewkesbury. It's important to be aware that there are other applications within the strategic allocation at the moment. So there's Swindon Farm, which is the one 00759, which is located in the southeast corner, which is currently under construction by Persimmon, and that's 266 dwellings, and that is part of the current application site. So, and the current application is compatible with that permission which is being implemented. And when you look at the parameter plans, that area is shown as being residential, but that is effectively part of the same application site. And there's also another application which is pending consideration at the moment, off Quatgoose Lane, the one ending 354. That's by another applicant, and it's outside of the current application site, but is within the strategic allocation, and we'll go on to later, so you can see how that application there sort of links into potentially the later phases of the application before you today. Just turning to what we're considering today. So the application was validated in 2016. So it's been before the authorities for 8 years. I mean, there has been a lot of work gone on in the background. There's been environmental impact assessments submitted with the application, which have been revised. There's been revisions to design and access statements. There's been a wide range of liaison over that time, and officers now consider we've reached a point where we're able to present a comprehensive package and a complete application to members. So the scheme before us, it's for up to 4,115 dwellings, which it's estimated will have a population of sort of 8.8, 9,000 people, but that is an estimate. And it includes affordable housing and elderly persons accommodation housing. and that would be 35%. So that's in accordance with what's required in the JCS. There have been extensive discussions during the determination of this application about the split of affordable housing which would be provided in terms of the amount of social rent, in terms of the amount of shared ownership, and the councils and the applicants have reached agreement on this. So what's set out in the committee report is what's agreed in terms of affordable housing. There will be a monitoring mechanism within the Section 106 agreement, just to take account of the fact that this application is likely to be built out for 20 years, and what the affordable housing need may be, what demographics may change over that time. So there will be opportunities for review mechanisms as we move forward. But as a starting point, that what's presented to you in terms of the affordable housing mix is what's agreed and is policy compliant. The application includes 24 hectares of employment generating business uses, including a 10 hectare business park, which is estimated will create about 4,000 jobs. It proposes a hotel. There'll be mixed use retail and community areas, which includes GP surgeries. It will include community buildings, sort of retail units of an appropriate scale for the application site to serve the new community. So that's all part of creating a sustainable place so that facilities are where people live and reducing the need to travel by car. The proposal includes 1 secondary school and 2 primary schools, a new park and ride facility, extensive areas of green infrastructure, 113 hectares of which, including a new sports hub, which I'll come on to later, and allotments. And the principal vehicular access to the site will be off Tewkesbury Road with a secondary vehicular access off Manor Road. I've put on the building demolition plan, which is the one we've added to the planning condition, just so it's clear to members what we're seeking approval for. So it's the principle of demolishing the dwellings to north of Tewkesbury Road, and the dwelling known as mouse doesn't come up. So the dwelling known as Fairfield, which is shown to be demolished on this plan, is below the little square in the west. So that at the moment is in third-party ownership, that dwelling. It's shown on this demolition plan to be demolished, but of course normal property rights apply. So that building would only ever be demolished if the owner of that land sold it to a developer. Just because it's shown to be demolished on this plan doesn't give any inference that you know that they'll be forced to do that in any way. So moving through to a large part of what we're actually approving today. So the application is supported by a series of parameter plans, which is for an outline application of this size, forms one of the principal components of the permission. So these land use parameter plans are what the environmental impact assessment is based on. So they form the parameters of the permission, set out a number of design principles where land uses, maximum heights of development, what areas will be green infrastructure, and then as subsequent reserve matters and design codes are developed, they all have to be in substantial accordance with these approved parameter plans. So these set the underlying principles of the outline planning permission. So one of the key plans is a land use parameter plan, which is before you now. So the areas in brown are where residential uses will be proposed primarily, although there is an allowance for play areas, sort of local shops as well within those areas. But that's principally the residential areas. I think it's just worth noting that when you look at those residential areas, they're interspersed with areas of green, which are areas which must be retained as green infrastructure. And those green areas follow the principal sort of river corridors, such as Swellgate, the main hedgerows, and it just provides sort of a breakup of the urban form to keep these green corridors, which can also work as green corridors and wildlife corridors within the site. Notable that the northern part of the site remains as green infrastructure, maintaining a separation with the landfill site to the north, so no houses can be built in that area. Sort of working from the site then, from the south east, the area in purple is a business park, so that's located sort of near Gallagher Retail Park and existing employment areas. So that's where the character of having bigger buildings matches a local sort of vernacular of that area. The pink area to the west of that would be one of the mixed-use neighbourhood centres, which is where you have retail units. The new GP surgery would be there. That's where we envisage the largest community building will be on the site. The hatched blue area over towards Uckington is where the park and ride would be located. And then as you move up, the sort of purple hatched area in the lower part of the middle site, that's just primary and secondary school. And then in the north, to the north of Swindon Village, that purple area is the primary school and another smaller local centre. So that's one of the plans which will be approved by the Planning Commission. And then you have a phasing parameter plan. So the blue area to the south is phase 1, which would be built first. So building out from Tewkesbury Road, going north. I think the key thing to note about that area in blue is that is where much of the principal infrastructure is for the development. So that's where one of the secondary school is, it's where the primary school is, it's where the sports hub is, it's where the GP surgery and the main community centres are. So the idea is then you start building a sustainable community from the outset, and get those key services in as well as residential units. So then the second part of the site that would be developed is the area in green in the northeast quadrant, which is more residential, but that's where the secondary primary school is, and the second neighbourhood centre. And then the third part of the site, which would be developed, is on that northwest corner, which is principally residential. By that time, you're building out that northwest corner. You've got much of the key infrastructure for the site will already be in place to serve it. And that's part of the phase of the development, to create a sustainable community and a sense of place. And it's just worth noting that area in yellow by the railway line, that is part of strategic allocation, but outside the current application site. But that would be accessible via the application site once phase 2 is built, so would enable the comprehensive development of the strategic allocation. So another plan is a density parameter plan, and I've added on arrows here, so it just can be read alongside the provisions and conditions 4B as well, which sets out building heights. But basically, this plan shows that by Tewkesbury Road, you'll have the highest density development, so about 40 dwellings per hectare plus, and the maximum height of buildings, residential buildings, would be 17 metres. So this is because it's the most built-up part of the site. The surrounding context is the most built up. So you've got Sainsbury's in the vicinity, you've got the Gallagher Retail Park. So it makes sense to make a more urban frontage reflecting Tewkesbury Road and that busier corridor of the site. And then the density of development will then, and the height will then decrease as you go north into a more rural context. And then you'll see the northern part of the site is a lower density, 30 dwellings per hectare, with residential up to 11 metres. So that could be, so there'll be lower story dwellings, maybe more bungalows at that top, and that's recognising the rural transition of that northern part of the site and its interrelationship with settlements such as Elmston, Hardwick. So it's getting the urban to rural transition as you go from from south to north. Green infrastructure plan. So yes, I think. So this green infrastructure plan needs to be read alongside the accompanying tree protection and hedgerow protection documents, which are also approved. But effectively, this shows all the trees and hedgerows and areas of green space which will be retained. It's important to note that within these green areas, there is some development allowed, which is sort of play areas such as tennis courts, leaps and the cricket pitches and the 3G pitch, but it's mainly the areas which are retained for green infrastructure. So you won't have houses within that area, and all those dark lines are all the retained trees and hedgerows. And it's important to note that they're all the ones running through the centre of the site. They're all down by the river Swellgate. So it's those key ecology corridors and bat foraging corridors within the site which are retained, and it's keeping those key hedgerows to maintain the historic field patterns. Overall the areas of green space amount to 113 hectares of land. So it's a substantial area of green space. There are planning conditions recommended alongside these parameter plans, which, for instance, will require the provision of walking and cycling routes within these areas, and there will be a requirement for a 5 kilometre sort of circular walking cycling route within that area, which you could do a park run on. So it's quite a substantial area of land. So you've got the parameter plans, which will be approved documents, and then you have also a series of plans which indicate how the site could be developed. So we'll have the requirements of a section 106 to provide certain amounts of cricket pitch, playing pitches, etc. And the strategies plan show how this could be delivered on site, and it's probably a fair indication of how it will be developed. But it's important to note that the conditions do allow for variation from these plans, but just these plans illustrate how it could be achieved. So within the play strategies plan, it's envisaged so that the north, that western corner of the site, just to the north east of Uckington Village, will be the main sort of play hub, and you can't actually see that clearly on that pan. But there'll be a new cricket pitch there. There'll be 4 tennis courts. There'll be a 3G artificial pitch, all within that area, and the 2 big orange blobs are what are called NEEPs, so they're sort of enhanced play areas for teenagers, and one will be a skate park and one will be a BMX pump track. So 2 of those to be provided across the site. So there's substantial areas of sports provision located within that area, and then there'll also be a sort of network of leaps and NEEPs across the site. I've just put the illustrative master plan up again, which is again illustrative. So this is how the developers envisage a site could be developed within the context of the parameter plans which to be approved. But yeah, it's just worth noting that you're looking at Swindon Village, the area of green space which is designated in the Cheltenham plan is shown to be retained as it is in the green infrastructure plan. There's opportunity to extend the existing allotments by Swindon Village to the northeast of Swindon Village. There's be a new primary school, new local centre, and then to the northwest of Sainsbury's is the new business park, secondary school in the middle of the site, the park and ride as you as you drive down the Tewkesbury Road. So it's just an indication of how it could be, how the parameter plans could translate into reserve matters applications. Yes, and here's the sports hub in more detail, which just basically shows what's proposed. So full size cricket pitch, pavilion with associated parking, 3G pitch, 2 youth football pitches, 4 tennis courts. There'll also be off-site contributions to some existing sports clubs. So off-site contribution to 321,000 to Cheltenham Tigers rugby, and 366,000 towards hockey pitches at Pitch Pates Grammar School. So at Pates Grammar School, and I think that the off-site contributions have gone to the rugby and the hockey because it's not really, it doesn't work viably just to provide one rugby pitch in isolation on site because they're club based. So it's felt better to contribute to existing facilities elsewhere. But it's fair to say, I consider that there would be a good sports hub on the site, which will clearly have to be sensitively designed at reserve matters stage and via conditions because it's in proximity to residential properties. So there's going to have to be sensitive sports lighting, sensitive noise attenuation measures, maybe, but that will be controlled by the conditional framework. Just showing the Southern Community hub. So within that area, there'll be an 800 square metre community centre, 1,264 square metre GP surgery, which would include have district nurses, dental suites, physiotherapists, and also there may be the way the planning obligations will work is that normally the secondary school would be required to have a forecourt sports hall. But what we've discussed with the developers is that instead of 4 courts, there would be a 6-court sports hall within the school, which would then be subject to a community use agreement. So the benefit of that is that the school children will get enhanced facilities in their school, and then the community can also use those facilities. But we can't guarantee at this time that the school would have a 6-court sports hall because it depends on which academy would end up running it. So the fallback position is then you'll have the sports hall, the 4-court sports hall in this neighbourhood centre. So the applicants have sort of provided an indication of what that building could look like. That is that's the design will be totally determined by future reserve matters. But I think that just gives you sort of an idea of the scale of what sort of community building we're looking at in that area to accommodate all those facilities. And then the Northern Community Hub, which is to the northwest of Swindon Village, would then be a smaller area with a 600 square metre community centre adjacent to the primary school. I've put the third-party land plans in because we have received objections from third-party landowners. And effectively, these 2 areas are to the in the northwestern part of the site within Tewkesbury's administrative area. And as required by the JCS strategic allocation policy, Bloor & Simon, the applicants, have put a planning application which covers the majority of the strategic allocation and shows how it could be developed to meet the spatial strategy and aspirations of the JCS. But at the moment, land deals haven't been done with 2 of the third-party landowners, and there is a planning condition in place saying that if that land is ever developed for housing, then there has to be an equitable contribution to Section 106 contributions, so they have to pay their fair share to schools and everything else we've just talked about. But those are those 2 parcels of land. And I think one of the key factors is that none of the essential community facilities such as schools, etc., are located on those land parcels. So the site could be developed Without those, and you still have all the community infrastructure, and you just have two areas which won't develop for housing if that scenario were to pass. And there's just a visualisation which the applicants have sent, just to give you an idea of how development may look. So you're looking from Tewkesbury Road north there, and in the centre of the site it's a secondary school and the primary school to the north of it. So that gives you an idea of the sort of dense development fronting Tewkesbury Road, and then the school in the middle, and then it's petering out into a more sort of looser grain of development in the north. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Very extensive presentation, as you would expect. So I've got 4 speakers now to take on board before we go into anything else. And I will remind speakers at this stage that they have 5 minutes in which to speak. I will remind them 30 seconds towards the end of their speech that they're coming to the end, and I will be very strict upon the timings. So the first speaker I have is Kevin Pascoe, an objector. If you would like to come to the microphone, and if you give me just a moment to get my timer sorted out. When you're ready to speak, I'll start the timer. Thank you.
I'm going to read it because I've written it all down. Good afternoon. Thank you for affording me the opportunity to speak. My name is Kevin Pascoe. I'm here with my wife, Tula. We are the owners of Fairfield. It has been our family home for more than 30 years. The submission before you identifies it directly, but also under the label of third-party land. Given its inclusion in the documents before you, we would reasonably have expected that whoever put the document together would have talked to us about it first. They have not spoken to us at all prior to its submission. We believe that we are being misrepresented and take strong exception to it. Our property has been included without our consent. We require it to be removed, including under the label third-party land. I must say I'm very uncomfortable having to be here today. I feel that I'm compelled to do it because of what is happening. With your forbearance, I will share a little more information to clarify context. I assure you it's relevant. We received a representation from Bloor and Persimmon in 2009. They invited us to enter into an option agreement with them, as well as an agreement under which they would promote our property. We declined both. We advised that whilst we had no issue with our property being developed at some future time, we have no interest to participate in such development ourselves. Our position was, and remains, simply to sell the property at a time that suits us and relocate. We are not property developers, and we do not want to participate in any development activity. They told us that they would put together, draft, what they called heads of terms. I didn't really know what that was, but that's the term they used, to reflect that and get back to us. They subsequently decided against doing this. We were approached by Bloor again in 2015, and we communicated that our position regarding the property had not changed. Between the two visits, I was invited into the Tewkesbury Council offices to discuss development interest. I confirmed at the meeting that whilst my wife and I would cooperate with preparation of development plans in general, we would not support any request for development approval that included our property whilst we owned it. I think today is a request for approval, which is what has alarmed me. I have confirmed no change to our position upon email request on a number of occasions since. Lastly, we have been approached by several land agents over the years and have responded in the same way to all of them. We found out about today's planning submission a week ago when a neighbour phoned to alert us that our property was specifically identified in the supporting document. I obtained a copy and read through it with increasing alarm. I'm not a property professional. It took some time to find a way of contacting Mr. Paul Instone, but eventually managed to do so. We spoke on telephone on Tuesday this week. I read this transcript to him to make him aware of our concerns. He said that he was anyway producing an update to his document and would attempt to address our concerns in it. We've not seen an update. We realise that our property is small and may be considered insignificant, the words Blore and Persimmon, I should say. But if the generators of the document before you had wanted to include it in their submission, they really should have talked to us about it first. It is our family home, and we most certainly do not consent to its inclusion. We require all reference to it to be removed, including from the label third-party land.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. I just wish to add that I applied to speak at the planning meeting that was held in Tewkesbury this morning, but my request was denied. I am astounded. That is it. Thank you for the opportunity of speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Pascoe. If you could turn the light off, that would be great. I now have Mr. Rob White, who is the applicant's representative to address the committee. The same conditions apply to you, Mr. White.
Good afternoon. Today's meetings are landmarks, 20 years in the making. The Joint Core Strategy established North West Cheltenham as a fundamental strategic allocation. As such, the principle of development at Elms Park is consistent with the development plan. The recommendation for approval is an especially important step on the way to delivering this plan-led new community. This is in no small part due to the work of your officers and in particular Mr. Instone. His report is thorough, accurate and objective. For a project of this scale, it is inevitable that it has taken time to appraise and refine the proposals. Throughout, the applicants have had an open mind as to how they could respond to various comments and requests from consultees. The house builders have committed over £10 million to get to this point, their focus being on fulfilling the policy requirements and requests from consultees. Notably, the applicants will provide much of the investment needed to deliver Elms Park and facilitate the delivery of other development parcels. They seek only to ensure that all parts of the allocation contribute their fair and reasonable share to the infrastructure costs. We do not prejudice, nor do we compel third-party landowners in any way. Elms Park will also make a significant contribution to the M5 Junction 10 shortfall funding, and we've been working closely with the DCO team to ensure compatibility with their scheme. Your committee report contains details on all of the issues for consideration before you, but it is worth noting some of the key elements. Elms Park represents a £2.5 billion investment in the area. It will contribute £300 million a year into the sub-regional economy, creating and supporting over 8,000 new jobs, with 30 apprenticeships a year during construction over 20 years. Over 4,000 new homes will be built, providing for a new community of around 9,000 residents, many of whom will already be living in the area. 35% of the new homes will be affordable to a mix agreed with your housing enabling officers. This will include at least 200 bungalows or ground floor maisonettes, along with retirement and extra care accommodation. Approximately £50 million will be spent on providing new schools, including a secondary school and 2 primary schools on site. approximately £25 million will be spent on community infrastructure, including a 6 GP healthcare centre, neighbourhood and local community centres delivered on site. A sports hub containing new facilities for cricket, football, tennis and all-weather 3G pitch will be provided on site, with significant contributions to local rugby and hockey clubs. A transport hub including a 350-space park and ride interchange with new bus services and EV charging stations. Tens of kilometres of new on-site and off-site cycleways and footpaths. New power and water supplies and a completely new foul drainage network. A new sustainable urban drainage network that will clean and control surface water flows, ensuring that the current greenfield runoff rates will be maintained. Over 45% of the site will provide new green infrastructure, including play spaces, parks, allotments, orchards, new wetlands, grasslands, hedgerows and woodland. This will conserve the key existing habitats for wildlife and provide substantial improvements and new habitats, especially along the River Swillgate corridor. Both developers are committed to the Homes for Nature scheme and its many positive measures for nature conservation. The new green spaces have been designed to buffer the existing villages and ensure that the setting of nearby listed buildings and conservation area are respected. Elms Park will be a sustainable development, built to future home standards, zero carbon ready and compliant with your local climate change guidance. Both Bloor Homes and Persimmon Homes are recognised as 5-star HBF house builders, ensuring build quality throughout their developments. They are committed to bringing
You have 30 seconds.
They are committed to bringing forward Elms Park as a well-designed, sustainable and healthy place where the new community can thrive. Respectfully, we invite you to approve of the Elms Park proposals and allow us to move forward and provide the much-needed new housing and employment land. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Within your space. And the next speaker I have is Mr. Cornish, who's a representative of the Swindon Parish Council.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start by saying we recognise the need for new housing in Cheltenham, and we truly believe that North West Cheltenham is a solid option to bring in extra capacity for our growing community. That said, we are disappointed by how long it's taken to get here. We're nearly 3/4 of the way through the JCS period, and we're still stuck debating the outline permission for what's supposed to be the major piece of Cheltenham's housing strategy. We recognise that we have played our part in this, given us a desire to ensure we shape the development so it minimises the impact on the local community. We ask the LPA to consider a different engagement model for the future detailed applications under Elms Park and future major urban extensions. I also need to highlight some real challenges we faced in engaging on this application. The last time the developers or their agents formally reached out to us was over 8 years ago, even though our parish councillors tried numerous times to bring up concerns and suggestions. We strongly urged the developers and the LPA to set up regular engagement forum to allow us to provide input and feedback. We are not here to try and stop this development. On the contrary, we recognise the need for it. We want to make it a success. We believe our local knowledge and know-how can help achieve this and smooth the development process. We would also like to raise the issue with the LPA's process. The CBC planning portal is not fit for purpose. Many residents still can't access key documents, and we saw that issue again this morning. On top of that, our council hasn't been notified properly about updates to the application, which makes it hard for busy councillors to provide the careful, considered feedback that this process deserves. Frankly, these failures are unacceptable for such an important planning application. We request that this committee instigate an investigation into what's gone wrong to ensure it doesn't happen again. On a more positive note, I do want to acknowledge the work of the CBC planning team here, especially Paul, who's helped bring this application to this point. Regarding specifics of this application, On traffic and transport, we support the proposed Grampian condition, limiting the numbers being no more than 260 homes before interim measures at the M5 Junction 10 are in place, 1,711 new homes before the full scheme kicks off, and 3,327 dwellings before the scheme is finished. However, these conditions are based on modelling undertaken by Gloucestershire Highways, which falls outside of the planning application consultation process. As such, we haven't been able to scrutinise these independently. Traffic modelling is very sensitive to its starting assumptions, and best practice would include sensitivity modelling to look at any potential cliff edge effects. We simply do not know if this has been done. Therefore, we asked the committee to modify the proposed Grampian condition to limit the total number of new homes to 1,711 until robust evidence can be provided for public scrutiny. On services, we have serious concerns about the lack of detail on how services like schools and healthcare will be phased. While we support the Planning Office's recommendation to attach Condition 2 requiring detailed phasing information, the provision of this information needs to be sooner. All detailed information must be provided and committed before the next full application for Elms Park, next phase of Elms Park, as proposed within 3 years, because there is no spare local primary or secondary school capacity. On construction, we are also very worried about the impact of construction on residents and the local economy. In Phase 1A alone, the length and unpredictable road closures have caused significant congestion, led to a 20-30% drop in customers for local business, and even forced one local business into administration. Right now, GCC Highways doesn't carry out any impact assessments for these major planned road closures. We need the LPA and GCC to develop an overarching framework for Elms Park that clearly outlines how road closures during construction will be managed so that impacts on the local community and local businesses can be minimised. To summarise, while we as a parish believe there is a lot to do to fully optimise Elms Park, we believe that these issues should be addressed in detailed full planning applications for each phase. We believe the current outline application is the best it can be achieved at this point and is acceptable with the proposed conditions along with the changes I have outlined. We recognise the urgent need for new homes and the certainty that this planning application will provide in terms of the 5-year land supply, avoiding future speculative applications that sap resources from all local councils. Our community needs certainty, and we feel the best way forward to provide that is to move forward with Elms Park. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to working together to get this right for our community.
Thank you, Mr. Cornish. And the last speaker we have is Councillor Flo Lucas, who's the ward member. And you two have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. This has been a very interesting debate to hear. I've been involved with this since 2013. And as James said, we've been through an awful lot of stuff in relation to the council's housing needs for a 5-year land supply. And it's good to see both him as chair of Swindon Village Parish Council and other organisations and a resident represented here today. I'll therefore comment on just one aspect of the application, which is a matter to me of great concern. Members will have read the report and have seen reference to Junction 10. The report confirms that the redevelopment of the junction and connecting road has not been confirmed by government, nor has the 71 million yet been fully allocated. In this report, developers are being asked for 20 million or thereabouts. So there's a heck of a shortfall, frankly. The current planning application, if agreed, will allow about 1,000 properties to be built before Junction 10 is finally confirmed. That would treble the size of Swindon Village and leave inadequate access and egress from the village for those living there. Why? Government statistics from 2021 show that for every 1,000 homes, then there were 1,200 vehicles. That was 2021. That's an awful lot more cars in that area. Can the roads cope? Well, current access to Swindon Village, the Swindon Farm site, is from Tewkesbury Road to a new roundabout that has been constructed at the top of Manor Road. Manor Road is a small, very thin, local road for residents there. It's not a major highway. And we understand that that roundabout is deemed to be a temporary structure. and therefore access to the village will again change. And I have to say to you, if you've ever been to Swindon Village, if you've ever seen the traffic going up and down that road, you will understand exactly what I'm saying, because for the residents, it's been a nightmare. So what about Brockton Lane? It is just that, a lane. And for trucks, diggers, bulldozers and other large vehicles to be used to transport materials to and from the new site is totally inadequate. Catgoose Lane has already been designated through the JCS as a road specifically for local traffic, allowing only buses, bikes and local residents to use it. So that cannot be used as an access and egress point. And therefore, what are we looking at? We're looking at Manor Road. That is what is being defined. Imagine a serious incident that requires the emergency services to attend. Where do they go? How? And one of the problems that we have in relation to this application is the lack of emphasis on the emergency services that are required, particularly in relation, for example, to a police station. Why haven't we got one inbuilt into the community facilities? So what's the answer? The application before you admits that Junction 10 is needed, admits that traffic will be affected. This is what it says. It's agreed by National Highways and the County Highways Authority that the implementation of the Junction 10 upgrade will release the capacity to support the JCS growth. Fine. Conversely, both National Highways and the County Highways Authority agree that this application site, alongside other strategic allocations, namely West Cheltenham, Golden Valley, cannot be delivered without severe cumulative impacts arising on the strategic highway network and the local highways network respectively. This application, alongside West of Cheltenham strategic allocation applications, are unable to mitigate their severe cumulative traffic impacts, and they are reliant on delivery of M5 Junction 10 scheme and the relief it provides in order to fully build out their sites. That is the case now. Agreeing to build the homes now before confirmation of Junction 10 cash has come forward from developers and government is not a decision I can support.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I would ask the committee to consider the following: a deferral of the application until government has confirmed the cash for Junction 10, or that a new condition is added to the decision to prevent building new homes on the site until such confirmation is forthcoming. That would require government funding to be made, not just promised, indicated or discussed. We also have to consider emergency service access. With narrow lanes, construction traffic, no confirmed infrastructure upgrades, there's a real
Could I ask you
delay
just to
for ambulances,
finish your
fire
sentence,
crews
please,
or police. And I have
Councillor
to say,
Lucas.
Chair, we risk losing the trust of residents if we don't take this forward. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. So now we come to members' questions, and Paul Instone will obviously be taking the brunt of all those questions. So, Councillor Wheeler was my first eye caught. Please go ahead.
Yes, I have two questions, but I think one's more a comment, so I'll leave that for a little bit. My first was, and really I know the answer, but for the sake of Mr. Pascoe, was it, of Fairfield, and the general public, he was very concerned that his land was actually shown as part of, and a planning application has been put in for his land. Now, my question is, am I not right that anybody, my next door neighbour, could put in a planning application for my back garden? That is perfectly okay in law. However, he can't build it if I don't either sell him the land or allow him to do so. So Mr. Pascoe could live the rest of his life there. He could sell the land on. He could do whatever he wished, but the application could not be built out unless he was to sell it to a developer who wanted to fulfil the developer's wishes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, that's a correct summary of the position.
Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions to Paul, potentially one that relates to highways as well. So I've read in the report that the junction will be completed before occupation of houses, assuming therefore that houses will go unoccupied until the junction is ready. Is this, can I please clarify exactly what this entails?
Yes, so in terms of junction 10 of the M5, so we've got two planning conditions. So there's condition 19 and condition 20. If we start with condition 19, that is that's derived from the consultation response from National Highways, and is to control severe highways impacts on the strategic road network. So on the motorway itself. And that condition says no more than 3327 dwellings and approximately 43,000 square metres of commercial floor space shall be occupied until the M5 Junction 10 works are complete. So that is what National Highways considered an appropriate amount of development that could be delivered on this site before there's a severe impact on the highways network, the strategic road network, whereas condition 20 below refers to the local highways network and was requested by the County Highways Authority who control the local roads and are concerned with severe impacts on those roads. And the trigger for that one is, there is a different trigger for that one. So it's prior to the commencement of Junction 5, then no more than 1,306 dwellings and 7,000 square metres of Class C floor space shall be occupied. So that does allow development to come forward a bit sooner because it's a prior to commencement trigger, which is, and it's about certainty of the contract. So once the works on M5 Junction 10 start, we know there'd be the known development timescale for that, and the funding will be in place. So that's an adequate control to know security of works being completed, and it's felt appropriate for the local road network capacity trigger to have that prior to commencement because it's more concerned with the funding strategy being in place to prevent the severe impacts coming about.
Thank you, yes.
You have another question?
Yes, I do. Yeah, thank you. That does answer my question. So, to clarify then, 1,306 residential units would be the maximum limit until construction has been granted and therefore finance is secured, and 3,327 would be the final limit until the actual construction is complete.
In effect, that's what the conditions would secure.
Thank you. And then my second question is with relation to the community representation organisation, which has been proposed by Swindon Village Parish Council. Now, I mean, pardon me if I've missed this condition, given the number of conditions that are part of this application, but if it is not already a condition, could it be conditioned that this is set up in the interim between the outline application, should it be approved, and the reserved matters application?
Yes. So the community liaison group, it isn't a condition. It'll be a planning obligation. So it's fully envisaged that the community liaison group will be in place before construction commences, and so will the community development officer. Their exact sort of terms and the contracts of how these community organisations will work will be finalised through the Section 106. But the groups will have an important role, firstly, in in helping existing residents through the construction process and making them aware of when noise is going to be and managing complaints if complaints occur. But then those community liaison groups will then be there in place as the new community is developed and comes forward, and just create those community organisations, hope facilitate groups who want to take the community centres, groups who may be interested in taking their new pavilions in the sports hub. So it's a long-term project and a mechanism that will be in place, from commencement of development through, sort of almost probably the first decade or so until as the community is built out, and hopefully it's trying to deliver that element of sustainable development in terms of social cohesion and creating a sense of place.
Sorry, just to
You want to continue for a second?
Yes.
I've got another question.
Sorry, just to follow up very quickly. So if this isn't going to be conditioned as part of any applications, and if this is going to be set up as a planning obligation in preparation for construction, I assume this means it will not be ready in time for the reserved matters application. And if that is the case, is there anything that we could add to this application to ensure that Swindon Village Parish Council and the surrounding parish councils and councillors are kept informed of this application post-outline application?
Yeah, so the planning obligation will be, and the heads of terms for how the community liaison group will work will be in place at the point the outline application is permitted, because it will be part of the planning obligation attached to it. And before the decision is actually issued on the outline planning permission, the Section 106 will be advertised online for a period of time, as is the case required by law. But it will then be some time before construction starts on site, because there are a number of pre-commencement conditions. So there needs to be design codes done for the site, which will show how the site will be developed, and then reserve matters applications will be submitted. So I think it will be the best will in the world. It will be a year or two before construction starts on site after this outline permission is issued. So I think there's quite a sort of scope to get those community engagement mechanisms in place so that residents are involved. And I imagine that Swindon Parish and Uckington Parish will be a central component of those, because they're the existing community organisations adjacent to site. So I'd fully envisage them being part of these community liaison organisations.
Councillor Oliver?
Thanks, Chair. Considering the complexity and size of this application, I don't have many questions, and I'd really like to thank the officer for the detailed briefings we've had and the on-site visits on Wednesday. The one question I do have is Councillor Clucas is suggesting that we should defer this until the funding on Junction 10 of the M5 is certain. Have we any indication of when that decision or knowledge might be known?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So we're waiting for Secretary of State's decision on M5 Junction 10. The indication is likely to be the 5th of June, but I think it's within the gift of the Secretary of State whether it will appear. So potentially next week or somewhere around that, and we'll have that confirmation.
Any other questions? Councillor Sahel?
Thank you. I've just thought of another one which slightly disturbed me, in that Mr. Pascoe stated that he'd been, this is my initial question, denied the opportunity to speak to Tewkesbury Borough Planning. But just for transparency, can you sort of reply to that and explain why?
Hello, sorry, apologies, pressing the right button. Much like Cheltenham Borough Council, there are speaking slots and there is only one slot per objector and supporter. Somebody had already registered in the slot at Tewkesbury to object, and obviously that was the slot that was taken. So unfortunately, that was the situation that Mr Pascoe was faced with, and obviously was offered the opportunity to speak to the person who had that slot to ask for their own views to be put. But it'll be the same situation as here.
Thank you. And my main question was regarding, is there any comment, there's a lot been going on about a community police station on the site. Is there any comment back about that and the need for that, or the politics behind it? Thank you.
Officers are aware that members of Tewkesbury and Cheltenham Planning Committee have received letters, and we're aware of conversations that have gone on in the press. But the contents of the committee report remain unchanged, and our recommendations remain unchanged.
Councillor Bamford.
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to Councillor Clugas's point about the narrowness of the existing roads during the early phases of, well, all phases of development. Now, we had a similarly large development during the 1980s and 90s in the southwest of the town by Warden Hill and up Hatherley. And pretty much the first thing that went in was a substantial distributor road. So all the access for that work was from that new purpose-built wide road, rather than, as Councillor Klugas described, narrow existing unsuitable roads. I just wondered where in the phasing we would consider that matter. Is that today, or is that to condition, or what? Thanks.
Yes, I mean, I think it's worth noting that on the parameter plan, which the land use and access parameter plan, the site is, vehicular access to this site is primarily obtained from 3 access points, which are all on Tewkesbury Road. So there'll be an access sort of opposite Homecroft Drive. There's one opposite the Civil Service Club, and one where on the stub by Sainsbury's. So there's 3 principal vehicular accesses off the site, and the site will be built out from south to north from that point. The access on Manor Road, serving Swindon Farm, that has always intended to be and always will be a secondary access. It's not intended to be one of the main accesses to the site. And that will be secured through the future reserve matters, future design codes. Will always ensure that Manor Road remains a secondary access. It's happened to be built first because that's where the Swindon Farm development is being built now. But in the overall strategic nature of the development, that will remain a secondary access. And it's similarly the access by Swindon Village by Quat Goose Lane. It's always, the parameter plans show that will be just for bus services, emergency vehicle access. It's not intended that will be a main vehicle access into the site.
So just for clarity then, those 3 accesses that we saw on planning view, they would be built as roundabouts, traffic lights, whatever, before development proceeded, and then roads would be built out from them into the site to enable access for site vehicles. Is that yes. The plan?
Yes. The county highways can probably help me with this as well, but there's certain triggers when these roadworks need to be in place, and there's been an awful lot of traffic modelling behind it, how many houses can be accessed off particular junctions off Tewkesbury Road, and then everything's built north off those 3 junctions. Yeah.
I was thinking specifically about the heavy vehicles that would be needed to construct the site.
Yeah, and in terms of, I mean, there will have to be construction management plans discharged as part of the application, and they will be considered by the County Highways Authority. And I would fully imagine that they'll be requesting that they go off these the newly created accesses off Tewkesbury Road and won't be going through residential areas.
Can I bring Karen Hatchett in, sorry, to comment on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I need to add more to the comprehensive response that you've already received from the officer. But in terms of construction, I note the concern that has been raised about construction traffic. I think it's condition 10 that deals with a construction environment management plan, and we will work closely with our colleagues in the Streetworks team to ensure that construction, takes place in the most appropriate way. We will work closely with them. There is always going to be some pain when you have construction, but we will work closely with them to ensure that access is taken from the strategic road, from the A road, rather than through narrow roads and Manor Farm. But yes, that is detailed in condition 10.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Chair. I apologise. I'm having a fight with a Russian cyber attack, so I can't refer to the report. My questions are quite straightforward, so I'll rattle them off if you don't mind, Paul. The height restrictions that you show on scaling down towards the north off Tewkesbury Road, we've been here before. I apologise in advance. Has the gradient been taken into account? We've had miscalculation of gradients before because the land isn't flat, and on the CGI, it always looks flat, which is not the case. Secondly, the sports facilities are being made much of, and we really need them and welcome them. My colleague, Councillor Allen, asked a question about funding, and we don't know about it. So in so much as I'd like to know, is Sport England contributing to any of those sports facilities? My third point is I feel really deeply, as you can imagine, for Mr. Pascoe, and I'd like to propose that you consider, all of you in charge, of changing the rules for a scheme of this size to allow more objectors to speak than one, because we are democratically elected to represent people, and Mr. Pascoe really ought to have had a chance to speak in front of his own councillors. Thank you.
Just going through those points in turn. The site is relatively flat. There are some landforms in it, but the heights would be sort of above existing levels, so there will be fluctuations across the site, and we wouldn't want to. Once you start doing substantial earth movement works, there's ecological implications, resource implications, and topography helps create sense of place and interest in the street scene. So yes, those heights will be they will vary, but I mean along Tewkesbury Road is fairly flat. Where the highest buildings are, you're not just going to suddenly have a huge hill in the middle of it. So I think yes, there will be some fluctuations, but it just gives you an indication. So question number 2. Sport England aren't contributing to the sports pitches, but they've been extensively involved in requesting and providing their thoughts on what's required on the site, and it's been done in consultation with Sports England. You look at the sort of demography of the population which is going to go on the site, the sort of quality of existing facilities in the area, and what is being delivered on the site is all being paid for by the applicants, so that they'll be providing it all. So there's no sort of gap funding in it. It's all the applicants providing it, and it's been agreed in consultation with statutory bodies. And I won't comment on the constitutions.
I think all I can say to the last point is obviously that comment's been noted, and obviously it's a point of view for the constitutions of both councils, isn't it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions coming forward at this stage? No. In that case, we will move on to member debate. And I think I'd like to probably start off. This is an application that's been on the books for some considerable time. It's part of our JCS system that the principle of development has been established for a long, long time. And here we are now facing with an application coming forward to provide that much needed housing that we've all agreed to. So we've actually agreed to the principles, and we've done the pain over that. And now we have the opportunity of endorsing over 4,000 homes to add to our 5 years supply, which will hopefully prevent developers coming forward and challenging us on our 4 year supply and putting applications in that we are not going to be happy with. So that's a big advantage to approving this particular application. If we did turn this application down, and I sincerely hope we don't, a refusal would expose us to appeals with a certain amount of complications, and I'd ask you to think about that if that is your intention. We got the opportunity here of 35% affordable homes. How many times have we had planning meetings where we've said this is so important that we get some affordable homes? I mean, we can all argue about what's affordable, but I think 35% of affordable homes, and they're not only affordable homes, but these are homes that are going to be built to a standard which accords with our SPD on climate change. Heat pumps, solar panels, you know, this is an opportunity now to provide sustainable, good homes for people of Cheltenham. And remember, all those people who are going to be living there are going to be spending their money probably in Cheltenham. There's going to be opportunities of work in this area. 8,000 people are going to be living in these properties. This is a substantial increase of the population, which will benefit Cheltenham greatly, I believe. It's making Cheltenham viable. Those people will be buying goods and services and household things within the Cheltenham area. So this is going to be added bonus to our economy in Cheltenham. I think the fact that we're also going to get a contribution to the M5 Junction 10 is hugely important. Without this scheme, you know, that would be doubtful. We are yet to understand what is happening with Junction 10, but that is on the cards, certainly, isn't it? And that would make a huge difference to our road structure in Cheltenham, I believe. So I don't normally, planning meetings, put my views forward, but I think this is such a huge and important scheme for Cheltenham that I feel obliged to put them forward. I'm very proud of Cheltenham. I've had a long association with this council over many years, and I've done things for which I'm quite proud of. I started Cheltenham in Bloom, and I think that developed the town to a wonderful extent. I think if this plan goes through, I would be equally proud of this scheme. So I would ask you to take this forward in a positive manner. I know, like all planning applications we have, there's always something that's not quite right. It's like making omelettes, isn't it? You have to break eggs to make omelettes, and perhaps the omelettes aren't always to your taste. But I think there is something here for everybody, I think, within our communities. And I think it's time that we take this and run with it. Whatever our future as a council is going to be, I think this is a way forward, and we have to take it. So I'm now open to other members to discuss. Councillor Allen, I saw first.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I wanted to say that was a very well put and eloquent speech, and has given me a lot to consider. And I also want to say a massive thank you to the officer for his very detailed, strenuous, and ultimately thorough report. I mean, the conditions, the number, the length, and the detail of the conditions is incredibly impressive, and I can't fault the officer for how this report is written at all. And I also want to thank the speakers for their contributions. Also, has given me a lot to think about. I did mean it when I say I came to this planning application with no determination whatsoever, because when I was stood there on planning view, looking over the fields, you know, we spotted the flowing grass, the vast expanse of green countryside, and we even spotted a deer prancing across the fields, very memorably and perhaps well timed to see such wildlife when we're considering such a huge development. And I do sympathise with Councillor Clucas's concerns. Councillor Clucas and I have been fighting seriously for traffic mitigation measures in Swindon Village for a very, very long time, at least since the start of my councillor time, and surely Flo for much longer than me. It was a big reason to why I objected to the folly, and I was informed at the folly application that Junction 10 would be a huge consideration for traffic. And it's funny, when you look at this application, you compare it to, early maps of Cheltenham, where even Hester's Way and Springbank, Benall and the Reddings, even parts of Charlton King and Charlton Park were not developed and did not exist. 50 years ago, that was. Cheltenham was but a town with small villages attached. And now here we are with a huge centre in Gloucestershire. And I think this application marks the start of a new chapter for Cheltenham, a new phase. And it's exactly what Cheltenham needs. I think it proposes a huge number of services which would be of massive benefit to the community. The schools are without a doubt going to be extremely beneficial, but also the GP allocation, the medical health centre, and in particular the dental suite. I mean, residents and councillors alike will know that the problems that we're facing with dentists in Cheltenham is acute. And I think any way that we can remediate this will be well welcomed by this council. And I'm very glad to see that come forward as part of the health allocations being proposed by the applicant. I'd also like to say I'm in huge support of the community spaces as well. I think oftentimes we suffer from a lack of community in the modern era. And I think anything we can do to help improve community, especially through things like youth centres, playgrounds, sports fields, is going to be of huge benefit, not just to this town, but also to future generations. I think ultimately traffic is going to be the big sticking point. There are lanes which are not adequate for the number of vehicles we can expect to see. But I'm also minded to say that we really do need this scheme, and we really do need Junction 10 to be able to remediate that. I think the funding that's going to go to Junction 10 via the S106 is going to go a huge way to improving our local road network. It's going to be one of the things that I've been fighting for in my time as councillor, and it would be, I think, in my opinion, ridiculous if I were to refuse that. The folly has come forward, and there's no point going back to an application we'd previously debated, but it's clear that the funding needed to improve the road network to make the folly sustainable is going to come through conditions granted in this application. So I'm very much of the mind to agree with this application, both as a ward councillor and as a resident of Cheltenham. I think if engagement could be improved around local parish councils and councillors, that is perhaps the one thing I would bring up. I'm disappointed, to be honest, in the state of the applicant's website and the lack of documents on there, the lack of consultation responses. I personally work in the industry, and I know that that is incredibly important to have. But I am very, very satisfied with the amount of consideration given to the local people in Swindon Village. The fact that the development is set back from the village in many ways. It's got that green space in between. It considers allotments, it considers wetlands and flood risks. I think, honestly, we couldn't ask for a better scheme. We need the housing. It is absolutely crucial. People in my generation cannot afford to live. They cannot afford to own a home. It is unbelievable that we have an opportunity here for 35% affordable homes, 70% of which are socially rented. Absolutely crucial. 4 to 5 bedroom homes as well. These aren't just sort of flats in the middle of streets that have sort of just been put haphazardly together. This is a serious development for a new community, a sustainable community. And I really look forward to seeing this application coming forward with the conditions in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Oliver.
Thanks, Chair. I don't want to repeat a lot of what you gentlemen have said. I've lived in Cheltenham all my life. I'm a great walker. Being in that countryside on Wednesday was wonderful, and you think what a tragedy to lose it. But I was born, I've lived in Cheltenham all my life. When I was born, there were about 50,000 people in Cheltenham. I live in a house in a road which was a field when I was born. I've got children and grandchildren who need houses or will need houses. And certainly by the time this proposal is actually built, hopefully those houses will be there. So I can't not support this. There are really good elements to this scheme. I like the way it's been phased. I like the level of green space. Sorry, when I say phased, to make sure the infrastructure goes in first. I like the amount of green space that there will be in it to make it feel like a village and still retain an element of the countryside. I like the fact that the hedgerows and trees will predominantly be kept. I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Wheeler.
Yes, again, I'm not going to repeat everything. I'll keep it fairly brief. I think every single one of us in this room would like to see that area stay green, fields, etc. That isn't the way life goes. Young people need homes. I can remember when I bought my first home, I think I was probably about the same age as Councillor Allen, maybe even younger. And a home was relatively cheap then. Well, it was £4,000. I can put that on my credit card now. But it was relatively cheap. Someone that was on a similar income to that today could not afford the type of house I bought then. We really do need houses for young people, well, for all people, and this will deliver that. I do have concerns, and I think has been mentioned before, we were probably talking highways matters. Swindon Village is exactly what it says. It's a village, it's a little village with little country roads that's suddenly been, or over the years has been enveloped by Cheltenham, but it is still a little village, and therefore driving through Swindon Village, I really hope, and I do trust in officers, that conditions will be put in to stop Swindon Village being used as access, certainly during the building stage, and that the 3 main roads off the Tewkesbury Road will be used. Now, to that end, I remember when, for many years, and I was very concerned about Junction 10 being two-way, i.e. one way off and one way on. And I thought for a long time, certainly all the time that I was on the council, when I was on the county council and we were told it is going to happen and the consultation was going ahead, I was really excited. Then I saw the final plans and told, this is what we're going to do, and I was jumping for joy. And then the plug was pulled out and we were told, yeah, well, that's what we're going to do, but we haven't been given the money for it. But no development on west of Cheltenham can happen until Junction 10 has been built. And we'd all thought that Junction 10 work would be built before any development goes ahead. Now, I think we're in the situation now where we're being told it will be, but they're going to have to go in side by side, and hopefully that the highways, not so much Junction 10 itself, but certainly the Tewkesbury Road, access in and out of the site, I really hope that that will line up properly, and I do trust in Paul and his officers to make sure that that does happen, because it would be a total nightmare if we had 4,000 houses and no decent access to them and people trying to drive through Swindon Village. So yes, I'm very happy for this to go ahead. I just do have concerns over the highways and trust in officers to make sure it happens.
Thank you very much. Councillor Steinhardt?
I promise I will keep this very short. First of all, congratulations to the officers, and particularly Paul, for putting such a comprehensive development together. I will be supporting this application. When I first looked at the plans, I thought, wow, I wouldn't mind living there. It's got everything I would want, especially, well, unfortunately the youth bit, maybe not, but the elderly bit and the doctor's surgery, dentist, community, sports, everything. And so I think despite there might be a few problems around highways, etc., which I'm sure could be resolved, I will be supporting it, and Cheltenham needs it.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Councillor Andrews?
Yes, I'll keep this brief, as pretty much most of the salient points have already been made by most of my councillor colleagues here. I'd also like to point out it's within the joint core strategy, and these are houses that cannot be built in the middle of Cheltenham or the middle of Gloucester. We have a forest in the far west of our county. We have, hopefully, the Western Forest being initiated to the south of Cheltenham, and the Cotswold Escarpment to the east. I can't see anywhere else other than here to build this. And one thing I would say about the motorway junction 10, it's Highways England and the national government should recognise this is of national strategic importance, this junction, and they should be stumping up quite a bit, to be frank.
Agree with you entirely. Any other member? Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Chair. If I might add one more point, and this is, again, thanks to Councillor Steinhardt, who raised this question the other day in our briefing regarding the Elms Park application, which is that I think, Councillor Steinhardt, if I'm not remiss in saying, you said that there would be, or you asked if there would be services brought forward as part of the first phase, to which the answer was yes. And that was extremely reassuring. I think the often time thought thing about these kind of developments is, okay, the services that are being provided are just for the development's sake. But actually, if they're developed in the first phase, we've got about 5 to 10 years approximately, depending on how negotiations go with Junction 10 and with phases 2 and 3, to have these services ready for the village residents, for the residents of Whiteman's Brook, for the residents of St Paul's and the residents of Hester's Way and Springbank to use. And I'm quite grateful for that. I'm very glad that they've been put forward in phase 1. And I'd like to say that maybe it's the right thing to do. So I'm very glad to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I don't see any of the hands going up, so I think we're probably in a situation where we might be getting towards the vote, but I will just ask the officers if there's anything they would like to add at this stage. No? In which case, I will be taking the vote then on this application. We do have a officer recommendation. It's laid out. Is everybody happy that they have seen it and they're happy with what's in that particular resolve? In which,
Can I just check?
sorry.
Chair, just to say, obviously, you had the recommendation in the report. It was updated in the update sheet, and obviously, verbally, you had the update to one of the conditions, condition 49. So that's what you would be voting on. Okay.
So is everybody quite clear? So we will be trying the system voting. Oh, it's coming up. So all those in favour, please show. All those against, please show. That's a unanimous vote for the application. Thank you all very much indeed. So that's 10 for, none against, no abstentions. Thank you all for your attendance. I can't leave this meeting without saying very sincere thanks to Paul Instone and his team. I think it has been said amongst the committee, but I think the work that has gone into this application over the years and recently has been phenomenal, and I think we should be proud of all of our officers who have been involved in this application. Thank you all very much indeed. I'll close the meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for the 19th of June.